Hey everyone, Papercut here with another theory breakdown video. This time we're going to talk about rating. Rating is something that you don't need to win a game, but it is very, very helpful. And arguably, if you're behind or you're trying to gain advantage, rating is vital for that to occur. And if you watch high-level games, rating is a consistent part of their gameplay, where both sides are trying to find any sort of edge they can gain by slowing the opponent's eco or killing villagers. And so I wanted to break down rating, try to simplify it, give steps to it, and also make it so even if you feel like you don't have the APM or the brain space to do it, that there is ways you can raid, and most likely at your elo that would give you a massive advantage. So let's talk about it. As always, before I do, I ask that you please like and subscribe. It's very, very big for a channel my size. If you're interested in coaching, check out the box below this video where you'll find links to my coaching Discord, as well as links to my Twitch if you want to watch me stream. All right, let's get to it. What is raiding? You see on the picture on the side here, some dead knights, but even more dead vills. Raiding is the act of sending units to harass an opponent's resources. Common characteristics of raids are done with a few units. So the idea is that you're sending your entire army to raid. If you send your entire army, that is an attack. A raid is usually a small group of units and you're keeping the rest of your units in reserve. This is especially important because if you lose those units while raiding, it shouldn't swing the game or swing the fight because you used, once again, a small amount. Now it's done often with cavalry, as the speed allows you to catch villagers and then allows you to get away and delay being caught and keep your opponent's attention on the raid. It can be done with any military unit though, it's just most effectively done by cavalry units. And lastly, this is usually targeted towards resources outside the TC range. Raiding under TC can often lead to units dying very quickly, but if possible, it's done to resources away from the beginning TC. Now, what are the goals of raiding? Now, to many people, the goals of a raid is just to kill vills. And while that is always really nice when that happens, there's actually a lot of other things that can come from raiding that we want to break down and think through so that we can better set up what are we trying to get done in the game. So, of course, villager kills are big. Every time you kill a villager, that's a villager who's no longer gathering resources, which means you probably now have a villager lead, which means you have a slight eco lead or more if you kill more villagers. And obviously, if you kill a lot of villagers in a raid, at that point, you're just trying to protect your own eco lead, outmaster your opponent, and win the game. So that is really nice. But there's more to it than just villager kills. Villager idle time is also a really big thing. Often when I am coaching lower level players and they're raiding, they will chase a vill all the way to the end of the TC and then they'll lose all their raiders. Now, what they didn't consider is the value of your raiding units just staying alive. If a villager is moving and not gathering resources, it's villager idle time, and that idle time does add up to lost resources. Raiding an opponent's wood line and forcing them to bring their wood villagers home, even if you don't chase them into TC, means they're not gathering wood. That could slow. Maybe they're not going to get a production building, an upgrade, the next set of units, what have you. And so just forcing the villagers to run and not gather is a lot of damage within itself. On top of that, if your raiding units stay alive, i.e. they don't run under TC and die, the opponent now has to either move units to attack yours, create new units to defend, or they're just out of that resource until they can figure out a way to get you to leave. And so or you'll scare them and they'll overcommit making units and they'll be chasing your raiding units around the map. So overall, keeping your raiding units alive and causing that idle time is still a lot of value. The action overwhelm. The pings and the raids, even if you're not getting a lot of damage done, just forcing your opponent to constantly have to consider what is happening and make decisions, or it can do this mental overwhelm to your opponent. There's been so many times that I am pushing an opponent, and while I'm pushing, I get raided. I then garrison those vills in TC, and I forget to ungarrison them, and now I have 15 vills who just aren't working. Or I forget to queue a house, or queue more villagers, or make my next set of military units, or I make the wrong building. Like, overwhelming your opponent with responses and forcing them to respond can lead to them making a lot of mental mistakes. These are things that might be hard to quantify or see on the end game map or graphs, but it does really add up. On top of that, they'll probably start making even more mistakes because, once again, their mental's overwhelmed. They're not taking time to think. And so even if your raids aren't doing a lot of material damage, the mental damage they can do is also really important. And lastly, buying time. It's very common that when an opponent is behind, let's say they took a really bad fight, they lost their own set of vills, they're trying to add a second TC, they're trying to age up, and if you attack during those times, they're going to lose. So what do? They buy time by raiding your eco. And usually it's done with horsemen or knights, and often they're not even like trying to kill vills, they're just running around. Like if you watch from their point of view, they're just shift clicking all around the back of your base, and you're forced to chase them, because if you just leave them, then they actually will do a lot of eco damage, and that might feel really bad. But often these are just done to buy time, because if you're not actively pushing to take advantage of that advantage that you have in the moment, then they can age up, get their military upgrades, make their next level units, and then push you back. Or their second TC will come online and they'll start getting the eco back. Whatever it is, the goal of that raid is often not to kill vills, so they will if they can't. The goal is just to keep your military in the base chasing instead of putting pressure on them. This image I included in the slide here actually comes from a game I casted yesterday with Cisco versus Clumsy, both very high level players. Cisco, if you look at the mini map, he was surrounded Clumsy's base. Clumsy had just gone castle. Cisco surrounding his base. He has units pushing on all sides. Clumsy decided to send 4 desert raiders to go raid. A lot of people would have felt like those 4 desert raiders need to stay at home to defend, but these desert raiders attacking at just this time, if you look at Cisco's eco, stops him from getting the 600 gold he needs to age up. That's going to delay his castle. That means he's still fighting in feudal. He's going to float a bunch of food. His villagers are going to leave this gold mine. When Clumsy is eventually pushed away, Cisco forgets to send his gold villagers back for a little bit of time. Like, all of this is the effect of the raid. Cisco had this really good push going, and it got delayed and stalled. And his next advantage, which is going castle, is also stalled just because Clumsy sent 4 desert raiders at this gold at just the right moment, right when he's being pushed. And so Clumsy is both buying himself time, but also causing idle time. He is causing action overwhelm. Like, this raid did so much to flip the game. When to raid. Now, you can raid at any time of any amount of units. We'll talk about the actual step-by-step thought process of that soon. But in general, some good times to raid. First, in the early game, oftentimes you don't have enough units to actually do damage or push their base fully in the early game. So it's really common to, one, if you just see your opponent's not making any units, send a small amount of units. 2 or 3 archers, 2 or 3 horsemen can get an opponent off gold, get them off their initial wood line, and really slow them down. Now, you're not actually trying to stay and fight, you're just trying to maybe get a vill kill, cause idle time, and change your opponent's build order. If you were doing a fast castle, it's very common to use knights to raid. When you go fast castle, it's nice to immediately make castle units. That's what you're going to castle for half the time. And so making knights that can then raid your opponent buys you space as the fast castles civ to do a lot. Inherently, you've invested a lot of resources into getting a castle, and so you can easily overwhelm the feudal units. Raiding with knights buys you time. You're not actually trying to get vill kills, so that it is nice. Instead, you're trying to maybe get relics, get a second TC, build up your own slower but stronger force, things like that. But it's very common to see knight raids done on age up as a way to then buy yourself time to get to the things that really make your age up powerful. Same idea as trying to age up. You're trying to age up, you're trying to survive your age up, and so you're sending out a raid to buy yourself time to get that age up going. Referring to this Cisco v Clumsy game again, where Clumsy is playing Ayubid, Cisco's playing Byzantine. The second Clumsy Goldfish reach castle, Cisco's pushing. And so he's trying to buy himself time, he's trying to buy himself space. So the second he hit that age up, he separates 4 desert raiders and goes to raid. Purposely to buy himself time, because if potentially he just fought in base, Cisco will get an age up, he'll upgrade his units, and then it'll be much harder fight. And lastly, you can't push yet. Let's say you want to fight, you walk up to your opponent's base, and maybe they have a keep, a couple towers, a lot of siege, something that prevents you from pushing at that moment, and you need to build up your force a little bit more. Go raid. Just grab a group of cavalry, or if you don't, grab a few men at arms, grab a few spears, what have you, and just go check the food sources on the outside of the map, or the gold, or any resources that are outside your opponent's TC on their side of the map. There's a very good chance they are on those resources. So if you can't quite push yet, don't just stand there with an idle army. Send small groups, not all of it, but send small groups to go check different resources so you can get a raid. And lastly, when the opponent is busy. The opponent is kind of always busy in a way, but if some great times to raid are if you're getting pushed, your opponent's probably putting a lot of time and effort into that push. Raiding at that point when your opponent's busy, they might miss it, lose a lot of vills, or they'll be forced to garrison and hide vills, ruining their eco and making that push like the only thing they have. Another option would be if you're attacking, your opponent's paying attention to you pushing their base, and then you raid at the same time. Oftentimes they miss that raid and they lose a lot of vills. And then the late game push. Oftentimes when you're pushing in late castle or imperial, your opponent has a lot of defenses, and fighting near those defenses, even if your army's bigger, can be really bad. And so what the raid can do is pull the opponent's forces back to chase those units. Oftentimes people will oversend the amount they need to defend a raid. You send in 5 knights, they're going to send 20 spears, or 15 knights, what have you, because they're trying to clean up the raid in their moment. They're not thinking correctly about what it takes to clean up that raid. And so a common strategy is to see if you can pull a lot of your opponent's units backward, and then you push as a way to then make that initial push easier, maybe kill a keep real fast, and then even the playing field. Where to raid? First of all, often when I'm coaching people and they name that there's a few reasons they don't raid. first, they feel like it requires too many actions and they just literally can't think about it. 2, they don't know where to raid. And 3, they feel like they don't have the micro to keep their units alive, so they're just throwing units away. So we're going to talk about 2 of those points in a second, but I want to talk about where to raid first, because where to raid is actually the easiest part of this process, in my opinion. First, it's very, very important that you've scouted the map fully in Dark Age. Dark Age has 3 main goals. 1, gather sheep. 2, see what your opponent's opening up with. But 3, find all the resources on the map. You need to know where you can get resources, and more importantly, you know where your opponent can get resources. This is especially important because for deer and boar, you can see in the fog war if they've been taken. You can see the deer standing there, and if they're on the deer, they're sought to die. You can see on the fog war. You can see if the boar is gone in the fog war. So you can use as a way to quick check to get raids off. 2, it's just good to know where those things are. So if you have a moment to think, I'm going to send a raid, look at your opponent's base and know where the resources are to check, whether that's gold, stone, food, wood, what have you. Now, where you raid is generally split up, I think, between 2 time periods. The first 12 minutes, the opponent can generally stay around their base. There's enough resources for them to gather gold, wood, stone, food near their TC. So if you're raiding within the first 12 minutes, you're generally trying to push them off gold or wood. Though, contextually, if your opponent is a civ that needs a lot of food, like Delhi, or any civ that wants like feudal fight, there's a good chance they're sneaking out to food. So the most likely place vills that are away from TC is on good food. Boar and deer for most civs, berries for some of the big berry civs. But if you're trying to raid in the first 12 minutes, checking the food outside the initial TC is usually a good play, especially if your opponent's playing aggressive. If not, if they're playing more fast castle, they're playing 2 TC, they might just be staying on the initial wood and gold. Post 12 minutes is when the first gold mine starts to run out. The initial deer, and not the initial deer, I'm sorry, the initial sheep are running out. And if they don't want to drop farms because it's expensive. Post 12 minutes is when you really see the opponent have to start leaving their initial TC to get gold, to get food, to get wood, or at least they've built their wood line way far away from they've eaten through their wood line. So post 12 minutes is when you really want to expand the circle. Generally, people are going to send their vills to the nearest next resource. They're not going to send their vills across the map. Some people do, crazy, but most people are just going to keep doing like the next circle ring outside their base. So if you ever have a moment to send units, just send a few units to these resources outside the map. It's even okay to, if you have some extra units, preset a horseman or 2 or a spearman, whatever have you, on patrol near those resources, because eventually the opponent will go to those resources, and if they're not paying attention, they might lose their vills before they realize your units were there. So how to simplify raiding. Raiding can actually be done with a lot of pre-setup and make it so your actions per minute are a lot less and you're not throwing away units for no reason. So let's talk about how. First, make sure you have a hotkey for a raiding group. I use 2 and 3 as my 2 different raiding groups until I take like a really, really big fight. And if I'm taking a big fight and it's kind of late game, I'm okay if my raiding units just kind of die if they're just killing vills in the process. So I don't have them on a hotkey. But for most of the game, my raiding hotkeys are 2 and 3. So make sure you have them so that you have whatever you decide to do your hotkey. This is my raiding group hotkey. 2, after the macro cycle, so you've built vills, you've built units, you've spent your resources, and you have like this open moment, decide 2 things. 1, do I have the spare units to raid? I.e., can I defend with a group of units and spare a couple? That's the big question you have to ask. And if so, great. Split off 2 units, 2 to 3, and go raid. Now, which unit should you send? I have kind of an order of importance here. Number 1, horsemen and ranged cav by far the best raiding unit. They're fast, they can get to villagers. Knights are also really good because they're tanky. They are slower than a horseman, but faster than most of their counters, so you can use knights. And then men-at-arms spears, ranged units. They can kill villagers, though they'll be quick to clean up and they can't run away as easily. So you're sending those kind of just to die often, but to cause some sort of eco damage in the process. So to reduce the strain of this, use shift click. So if you don't know what that means, it means when you have a unit selected and you hold shift and you start clicking, you're setting up a group of actions for them to follow. So my suggestion is you look at the map, you see where the outer resources are, grab a few units and just shift click them to those resources around the outside of the map. Don't send them in the middle because there's a chance they might run into the enemy and die. You want to loop them around the outside of the map. So if we're gonna, oops, my bad. So if we're looking at this map right here, right? If I'm looking at this, I know that the food is located on the edges. So if I was to shift click units to go raid, I would grab my units, I would hold shift. You can click on the mini map, I would click around the outside, and then I get near the resources, I would then hold shift A and then shift attack move. You don't want to attack move through this because you don't want to just keep getting caught up on wolves or stuff like that. But you want to shift around towards the resources, then shift A move through the resources. And so that allows you to then have those units be raiding and checking without you paying attention to them, because what you don't want to do is just watch a raiding group and waste eco time. After that happens, you want to pay attention to when that alert ping happens. So if they actually catch some villagers and start attacking, that's when you want to jump and actually watch, because you know your opponent's going to react. Once they send units to react, do the same process where you shift click your raiding units back towards your side of the base and just run away. And once you've shift clicked them away, go back into your macro stuff, main base stuff. So what you've done is you've simplified the action, so you're not overly paying attention. You're still maintaining your macro, your village production, unit production, buildings, eco upgrades, stuff like that. But you're only paying attention when action has actually started. And then once you've done the damage, just run. Don't stay and take fights unless you absolutely are sure your raiding group can beat whatever units they send. Kill some vills if you can. Force idle time if possible. Get out. You've done damage. Your opponent will make potential mental mistakes at that point. They'll leave the defending units back. They'll overmake units and send them somewhere else. Things like that. Lastly, bonus points. Coordinate a raid when you are attacking or being attacked. So if you are attacking, that's the best time to raid. If you're being attacked, that's the best time to raid. Being close to death is great to raid because they're fully paying attention on pushing your base. That's a great time to send just a few units around the sides and raid and catch villagers off balance. Overall, I hope you enjoyed that video. You learned something from it. Try raiding in your games. Even the small little raids can do a huge amount of damage and turn the tide of the game in your favor. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck on your games.